Good morning, my dear friends. I'm Lily, and today the first episode of our podcast will be around the lesson planning. Why is important to plan, and what types of teachers can we come across with regarding this lesson plan habit? Well, first of all, I would like to say that, different authors see lesson planning as uh, by using different metaphors. For example, a lesson could be like a film with a plot, with a theme, with a rhythm, flow, and ending. It could also be similar to the jazz, with an initial chord sequence that players improvise on, the same ways as teachers do. It could be described as climbing a mountain with hard work and sense of satisfaction when reaching the goal. Or maybe the teacher could be seen as the bus driver with but the bus full of students who are going on a journey. If you imagine the lesson like a journey, then the lesson plan is like a map. Without a map, we have no ideas where we want to go or how to get there. Starting a journey with no idea where are we going to, well, it still make the adventure interesting, but it would be very easy to get lost, and our passengers, which are our students, would not be very happy. However, I guess that the best metaphor to describe a lesson is to compare it with the preparation of a meal. Well, the way a cook plans a meal for a large group of people can suggest a similar way in which we prepare the teaching process so students can benefit from it. As teachers, we can choose to satisfy our students with a pre made heated up meal. We can also choose to just put together some random ingredients we happen to have in our kitchen, or maybe we can plan to elaborate a multi course meal like in a luxury restaurant. We can focus on nutrition, good taste, beautiful presentation, or a combination of this. I find admirable to see how good chefs prepare in advance a meal to suit all customers coming to dinner. Keeping in mind, all the cases, those customers who are vegetarian or they have some dietary restrictions, for example, like the Muslims, those customers who cannot eat spicy food, or for example those customers who have some kind of food allergies and so on. However, there may be someone who forgot to tell the cook that he's allergic to wheat or he's on a special diet. A good chef, in the same way as a good teacher, does not mind bringing out a fruit plate instead of chocolate cake whenever the situation will require it. Well, in the process of planning, in the same way as happens in the kitchen, what to serve for lunch or dinner, it depends on the teacher, right? We can stand at the freezer and decide which prepared meal to heat up, or maybe we can have a trip to the market, to the farmers market to see what is the season's best if and freshest ingredient. Well, in the same way, lesson planning can vary depending on the resources and time teachers have. However, just as a meal is converted into from raw ingredients into the energy the body needs, a lesson plan will enable teachers to give students what they need to acquire the target language in an enjoyable and digestible way. And what is lesson planning? Well, according to Celsa Murcia, lesson planning is the process of taking everything we know about teaching and learning, along with everything we know about the students in front of us, and outing it together so we can create a roadmap for a period of time. And why is important to plan? Well, there are different reasons for doing so. First of all, because planning is a sign of professionalism. Definitely, students expect teachers to be professional. If you are prepared, the students can tell. They also know if you're not prepared. Planning is a way to help gain the respect of your students. Another reason is because by planning, we are basically considering our teaching situation and our particular students. However good our teaching material or our course book may be, it is unlikely that it was prepared for our particular students. Planning gives us the opportunity to tailor the material and the teaching to our specific class. Planning gives teachers a sense of emotional security, of emotional confidence. This is a fundamental condition so we can face the complex diversity context within the classroom. Planning also gives the teacher a chance to anticipate possible problems in the class and think about the way to deal with them. By thoroughly researching the target language and being prepared for difficult questions, for example, the teacher can feel confident in the classroom. And well, before we going into the lesson, definitely lesson planning, it helps us to be clear about what we want to do. A lot is going to happen on the spot of the class, we already know that, but the better prepared we are, the more likely is that we'll be ready to cope with whatever happens. It is possible to teach without any pre-planning, definitely, but planning increases our chances of a successful lesson. The way teachers plan depend upon the circumstances in which the lesson is to take place, and it will depend on the teacher experience. I would like to mention here Jeremy Harmer, who, as striking as it may seem, he recognizes two types of teachers which may think differently about whether to plan or just walk with the flow. On one side of the spectrum, we come across those teachers who take the jungle path and walk into the class with no real idea of what they are going to do. They do not have a clear, established roadmap. What they do is basically they flow with what the students are up to do that day. Such an approach is favored by Mario Rinvolucri, who has suggested that instead of working to a pre-arranged plan, a teacher should be more like a doctor, basic treatment upon accurate diagnosis. All classes are different, he argues, so to decide beforehand what they should learn on a given day is to confine them to a mental structure and ignore the flesh and blood here and now learners. This is basically the opposite to planning carefully a lesson. The main plan is to create a lesson moment by moment and not plan or prepare so much. The starting point might be an activity or a piece of material, but what comes out of it will remain unknown until it happens. Definitely, by taking this approach, we realize that we are working more with the people in the room than with the material or the plan. What could be an example of this type of activity, of this type of jungle path lesson? Well, for example, teachers may enter the class asking, "How was your weekend? What did you do on the weekend? Where did you go?" Or asking a similar question, and after listening to a number of answers, lead this into a discussion based on something a student said. At some point, we kind of select a particular item of language that a student used, and we can focus on that item, perhaps grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, and just invent a simple exercise that will help students work on this element. The jungle path lesson can look artless to a mere observant, but to do it successfully, it is not that easy. It requires experience and certain skills. It is not simply a chat or an abdication of responsibility. If you are not experienced enough, it could be simply a lazy alternative to careful planning. So, the second type of teachers on the other side of the spectrum, are those who write formal plans for their classes with lots of details. In her book, Where Great Teaching Begins, Anne Reeves considers that we are to respond to this question if we need to start to the very beginning of her teaching. Yes, so basically she considers the the instructional experience uh, in the same way as a very formal plans, and basically we need to think in a disciplined and creative way about students thinking. That's to say, she may be the opposite of a jungle pad teacher. And well, in her book, Where Great Teaching Begins, Annie Reeves differentiates between the lesson plan and the learning plan. This widely used and familiar term, lesson plan, that we are all accustomed to work with, originates from a teacher's point of view. A lesson plan is the teacher's plan for carrying out a lesson. It implies learning, but repeats the error of assuming that if learners go through activity X, they will learn context Y. Of course, it's true that if the lesson is planned and delivered by a teacher who knows how to use every part of it to generate appropriate learning, the term used to describe the plan will not matter a bit. However, a consistent focus on students' learning rather than on teachers' performance show us that a more accurate description of what we are creating when we design instruction is a plan for students learning. So basically she aims to say that the difference between the lesson plan and the learning plan is basically the risk, taking the risk that by designing the lesson plan may not result in student learning, while planning for students learning says directly that learning is the focus and the goal. The shift in perspective embedded in this term is the goal of this book. So in the rest of the book, whenever we will refer to plan for students learning or students learning plan, we will replace this by the lesson plan, right? When you have internalized what students will learn and how they will show their learning, we will understand how to work with just about any legitimate learning plan format.